What's up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about The Warrior Prophet by R. Scott Bakker. Now, this is going to be a Let's Talk video, so that, for those that don't know, is going to be filled with spoilers. If you're looking for the spoiler-free review, I'll put a link down in the description, and feel free to check that one out. This one is really for people that are like fans of the series, as well as for those that just love to spoil shit for themselves. And, you know, maybe even more than that, this is really just a chance for me to get a lot of this stuff out of my head, off of my chest, before I push forward into the Aspect Emperor series. Let's get into it. So when we start out, we get this, like, scene, and it's just, like, one of dread, really, because we're seeing, like, armies of Shrank and armies of Skilvendi just fucking shit up, and it just doesn't look good, and it only gets worse. We see the entrance of Mog Farao, the no god, and it's just like the sense of impeding doom, that dread that gets just instilled in you from reading this bit is intense. It's crazy. And then we kind of realize we're in the dream, the shared dream of the school mandate, Seswatha's dream. And, we see Natsera, and he's really the one, like, experiencing this. And then we see Achamian has contacted him. And we see this, conversation play out between them two, which is interesting because we haven't really seen them communicate at all, since, pretty much since the beginning of the first book. Now, what's more interesting than the lack of communication here is just like kind of the lying by omission that happens from Drusus Achamian. He's not upfront with the school or with Natsera. Like, he tells them of the events of the Holy War and everything. Like, essentially, he catches him up with everything but Kellhus. And this is actually a huge deal, considering that, for the school, the mandate school, the bit of information about an Anaserember returning to the world of men would be a huge deal, something they would definitely want to know about. And it's not like Achamian, he just forgot. We know that he's holding this back from them because he feels something towards Kellhus. And this is really like, we begin to see, like, where Kellhus, this is like the grooming, where Kellhus begins to groom a lot of our players in this story, specifically Achamian. We also see early on that Esmenet and Achamian find each other here in this holy war. And, the funny thing there is we see that, Esmenet holds something back from Achamian. And we also kind of find out, where we know that Kellhus is holding something back from Achamian. And it just is kind of funny because you have all these people that are very close to one another. And everyone's just kind of lying, or at least, lying by omission to one another. And it's not necessarily always because it's like, malicious. Sometimes it's because it's this, out of love, or, maybe out of fear of the consequences, because they do love this person and they don't want to hurt him or lose him. Either way, really early in, like I said, we've seen Achamian basically lies to the school mandate by lying by omission, by not telling them about Kellhus. We see Esmenet lie to Achamian about Sarcellus, or at least just hold that information back. And then we also saw Kellhus not tell anybody, even including Achamian, about being able to identify the skin spies, because we know that Kellhus could see that there was something wrong with Scaeus's face. In fact, that's kind of how Zarias figured the whole thing out, right? Because he saw Kellhus eyeballing Scaeus. So there's just a lot going on right in the beginning, but we can see that people are just not communicating well with one another. Now, when this holy war actually gets moving forward, this part I really loved because it's such a gigantic army. The holy war is huge, made up of many factions of the Enrithi people. And now, because of the Scarlet Spires, it's also made up of, factions of the heathen. So the thing is, it doesn't move in one big old, blob. It's broken up in contingents and in standards and all this stuff. And this is what's cool because they're all in the same area, but they're a little bit further away from one another. And when the perspectives jump, it's just not so jarring because you're not jumping thousands of miles away. So I really dug the just the format of this holy war and how it moved forward. And I do like it. Kind of felt realistic as well because we saw, that the Scarlet Spires are dragging behind, and why wouldn't they be? They're not used to like traveling like this. They're not meant really for war and stuff. And so yeah, that I thought was really cool. But then really we get to see this whole thing with the Scarlet Spires, right? We see this thing play out with Eliazarus, where he gets, kind of like a spy from another school, the ones that are, kind of looked at as whores because they're just, they're looking for money for that information. And so we see that whole thing play out, and we see that Eliazarus gets information about these skin spies, about Kellhus, and about Achamian, but it is kind of mixed up, and it's like information, but it's kind of misinformation, and now Achamian becomes a huge point of interest for the Scarlet Spires. In fact, they look at him like now at like a threat. And what's cool about this little scene, though, too, is we really get to get a real good taste of, like, one-on-one magic here. And we get to see, like, the wards and stuff at work. It was just really cool to see Eliazarus, cut loose on Homeboy with the fucking flame sparrows shooting through his body and everything, and that was just fucking cool. Now we also get to see that, along the way early in, that Achamian has taken up the role as teacher to Kellhus, and he's going to teach him stuff, about this world. He's kind of in his head decided that he's going to hold back the Gnosis from Kellhus because he just doesn't really know exactly how to feel about Kellhus. He's not, and this is why he won't even tell the school, because he's not sure, right? He's not sure if he's the harbinger of the second apocalypse. He's not so sure. Kellhus is proving himself to be such more than a man. It's blowing everybody away, and Achamian is no different. And so along this way, the teacher kind of becomes the student, really, because we see that Kellhus takes everything that Drusus Achamian throws at him, learns it in no time, and then throws lessons back. And Achamian, time after time, is just kind of stumped by this. This is just kind of unheard of. Now, like I said, this whole thing with, Kellhus and just kind of seeming to be more than a man is not just limited to Achamian. Like, men of the Tusk are beginning to kind of see him as something more than a man as well. And the thing that probably helps Kellhus's side is that he just kind of denies it all the time, you know what I mean? And that just further makes people love him that much more, And as we push forward in this holy war, we're going to see this thing play out. And it was like, when I saw this happen, it was like, this is when I started getting like these biblical or Bible like feels and vibes, right? Because when Saban basically approaches Kellhus, because we can see now that some of the great names are getting antsy. They want to get to the glory first, or just ahead of some of the others. Some people just want bigger pieces of pie, and then you also have the Nancer Empire who just want it all. But we get to this point where Saban has approached Kellhus, and Kellhus, in a way, he cuts through Saban like he can cut through people. And what he gives him is like, what Saban takes it is like prophecy almost. But Kellhus uses this as a way to gain advantage here in the Holy War. He has a strategy cooking up, and he also kind of attaches a little extra to it because he knows what's up with these skin spies. He knows Sarcellus is a skin spy, and Sarcellus is a Shrial Knight. So Kellhus cooks that whole thing up. He basically puts the battery in the back of Saban, charges his ass up, and sends him on his way, but lets him know he wants the Shrial Knights punished. And this is just cool as shit, because this is when we really start to get this holy war vibe. At least I did, because it was like, holy shit, like this is like some religious fanaticism at work here, right? This dude, like Saban, like all logic and stuff kind of starts to go out the window with him, and we see that he is just like a man blinded by faith. Now, also, while all this has been going on, we have like the Conryans with their prince Proyas, and Proyas has really taken up with Naor. Like, he's really taken up with the Skilvendi barbarian because Naor knows the enemy, and Proyas knows this because he can see it. And it's kind of interesting, right? Because we're seeing like the heathen and the idolater really finding a common ground in their enemy. And Proyas and Naor actually, I feel like, kind of look up to one another, or at least are, in maybe an unspoken way, proud to be each other's friends. As well, this whole time we've had, Ikiri Confis and his uncle. The Nansur Empire has not let up with their fuckery here in the Holy War. They are here and they are perverting it every which way that they can. And in fact, before we get to the plains of Mengedda, we've already seen some of that fuckery in action. But it's nice, right? Like, I love this, like, the Imperials that Bakker has here. Even that bit we get with Zarias there, I can appreciate, as uncomfortable and as gross as it is, I can appreciate that there's this incestuous, like, nature and part of the, of Zarias, just of the Imperial family. That is something that is realistic, and it reminds me a lot of, like, these Roman, like, Roman families from our own history. But, we get Confis in just being Confis, right? He is such a perfect, asshole. I here as well, we get little snippets between Naor and Confis, and it's great because, like, when you hear Confis say Skilvendi, he has like venom on his tone, and it's just great. Like I said, you got Naor and Proyas trying to actually do work here in the Holy War, and you got Confis trying to kind of claim victory and steal anything he can along the way. And then you also got, Kellhus, Achamian, you got all this shit going on here, and then we're approaching, the plains of Mengedda. Now, how this whole thing plays out is fucking awesome, right? Because Bakker has already been feeding us with, bits of history and, just the bloody, haunting past of these areas that are being, slowly taken over during the Holy War. And Mengedda obviously has just the spookiest of, histories. It's just got a bloody past that you can physically, spiritually, mentally feel. And so it gives that crazy fucking vibe. And this is also during the time where Kellhus has given Saban that, basically like a little piece of personal prophecy so he can run off, just fully charged to go kill the fucking enemy. And, other great names followed Saban. So now, half the Holy War is gone off on this kamikaze mission. And when Proyas and the Conryans and Naor show back up at camp, basically, they're like, where the fuck are our troops? And they find out that, that Kellhus basically told Saban this and, sent him on his way. And it's just like, oh, shit, what the fuck? Then we watch Proyas and Naor and some men of the Tusk basically chase after Saban and the other great names. And as they're tracking them down, we see that the men of the Tusk they're not doing good. The men ahead of them have obviously gotten their asses kicked, and Naor is like the one kind of giving them the play-by-play because he can read these battlefields on what happened. So we're kind of getting, enlightened to what's going on, even though we can't see the other half of the fucking army. But it doesn't look good. We're understanding how tricky the Kianine people are. Like, their fighting tactics are different, and they're dastardly, and they're effective. And then we get the battle of the plains of Mengedda, and this thing is fucking bonkers and badass. I mean, just the way it starts. I mean, this is just like, I guess after you read enough of his battles, it's almost like classic Bakker, right? Because of that. He's building it before, anything has even, like, a arrow has been loosed or a sword has been unleashed. and this one was really cool with, the Iron Men of the Tusk, and they're all singing, and it's just, a warring we will come, a raving we shall work. And it's just like, you could feel that vibe. And then on the other side, you got the Kellhus, and they're just hitting their war drums like dum 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 dum. And then we get that first charge, and it's bloody, and it's just fucked, and it's crazy, right? You have these two sides, two different faiths, men that hate each other, and they're just hacking each other down. And the thing is that, like, momentum, that build, it definitely helps us feed into that battle, but it also in a way kind of confuses, I feel, but in a good way, because you are kind of getting this momentum, and you're feeling it for the men of the Tusk, and you're like, we're gonna fuck some shit up, you know what I mean, die heathen. But the thing is, we find out in that first charge that it doesn't really go the way the idolater wants it to. In fact, the Enrithi people get fucked up here in that first charge, and we find, Saban, and he's just kind of discombobulated and just like, what the hell? We had them, because or I keep saying we, but it's like, the Enrithi people were fucking them up, and then the Kellhus found a way to come, turn the tables, and this battle really does flow a lot. That was what was really cool. But you got Saban on the ground, just, we had them, and fucking Gotian's trying to shake him. Get a grip, man. Like, you gotta get the fuck back up there. You gotta lead this fucking charge. You can do your job, buddy. You know what I mean? It's just, it's all this shit going on, and it's, when Saban gets like back up, and he's like cleaving the fucking head off the horse and taking men down one after other, it's like that second like breath, like that new like second wind. Just it's so invigorating to like read, I guess. Like, it's just badass. And then we get the calm before the second charge. And now, as amazing as this battle has already been, I have to admit, the way that Bakker captures the calm between the first and second charges is something that is just mind-blowing and amazing. And like, a lot of people are like, what the fuck? I mean, because I'm literally talking about just this short little moment, but man, oh man, was it clear as day. It's just so, that calm, you couldn't even hear the dying, in this moment. And you see like the grass kind of flowing, and that butterfly, kind of fluttering across the battle plane. Like, that moment is nuts to me. And then you see, Scars come out, onto the battlefield, and the Enrithi people are shooting arrows at him, and they miss, and he just like busts out his knife and starts like filing or cutting his nails. It's like, whoa, that is gangster. In the second charge, that is like where, we see the Kellhus bring out the Kisharim, and that is like where this thing gets just, it goes full tilt, right? Like, we get a nasty display of sorcery, not like we're watching Saban and the Iron Men of the Tusk fighting for their lives, getting hacked and hacking the others, just bloody mayhem. And then fucking the Kisharim fire and spells that are just destroying and killing people by the hundreds in a second. Can you imagine watching 100 of your friends dying in 1 second? Brutal, But this is also like what really made this battle so intense for me, because, like I said, you're really watching like this war of religious fanaticism. These men are so supercharged on their belief that they're fucking dying tooth and nail and just going for it. They got this like the belief that they're going to win and they're God and all this stuff. And when you start seeing soldiers whose brains are being burned in their heads, but yet they're still storming the battlefield, that is insane. It's like, it's so dark, but it's inspiring in a way, you know what I mean? And, when men are immolating in their saddles, motherfuckers are dying at a rapid rate. They're being burnt up. Shit is nasty and gnarly. But you know what? they do like this Hail Mary charge, and some of them are like, bearing Kore, and they fuck up the Kisharim. And we know that there's not many sorcerers, Kisharim, all of them out there. So like, as many men of the Tusk it took to kill these sorcerers, it was worth it. And it turns this whole battle, and it is an amazing victory. It's like a battle. It's a battle that was like one that was meant to be won, one of the prophecy, and it's just crazy. Now, this is a huge victory for the Iron Men of the Tusk, and we'll see those great names get plenty of praise heaped onto them, even though this was a suicide mission. But also, we see that this in turn sends massive amounts of people Kellhus's way. You know what I mean? This whole thing about Kellhus like possibly being a prophet is now more of like a reality than it is just like a rumor. And more and more men are joining him by the fire, like wanting to listen to him, like, and he's really he's getting through to everyone. He's tearing through and changing people and just manipulating his way to really gaining a grasp and controlling this holy war, like just soldier by soldier. We'll even see like Martimus, the most logical of soldiers, and Confus's right hand man, and that's the real like kicker, right? When we see Martimus basically get taken by Kellhus and warped, you know what I mean, like to Kellhus's ends. Man, that is some shit. Now we see that not everybody really is enjoying the prospect of Kellhus being a prophet. Namely Ikiri, Confus, and just the whole Nansur Empire. They don't. This does not feed their needs. And we'll see Confus speak up and also try some more fuckery. He tries to just kind of bash Kellhus every which way that he can. Prophet or not, Kellhus still seems to worry some, Achamian mainly, because he is a student. He's been holding back the information from his school. He just doesn't still know about Kellhus. Every night when he goes to bed with Esmenet, he's talking about Kellhus. He's trying to figure out Kellhus. And when he has a worry that Kellhus might be one of the few, and Kellhus proves it to be true, man, Achamian's shitting bricks. He's freaking out. And he goes to the library that they've been taking over all these areas, and so there's this library here in Kian, and I can't remember the name of the library, sorry guys, but so Achamian goes to this library trying to find some shred of evidence, something to like figure this whole shit show out. And while he's there, he's abducted by the Scarlet Spires, because Eleazarus thinks that Achamian is his enemy. So they abduct Achamian, and it just kind of gets turned into this thing where like Achamian's gone, right? And like everybody thinks that he's dead. The Holy War moves on, and while this whole thing is going on, like Achamian's being tortured, and it's really dark. We're seeing this exchange between the Scarlet Spires and Achamian, and it's a painful one to watch. And then we'll see like later on that Zanimus, he sets out to go fucking get Achamian, and this is a kind of a heartbreaking deal because Zanimus has always played the in-between between Proyas and Achamian. He's like kind of like the band-aid for those two, and it's kind of a heartbreaking deal that Proyas just won't help Achamian, you know what I mean, because Achamian's a heathen. And Zanimus basically gives up everything to go rescue his friend. And in that rescue attempt, he gets his fucking eyes stabbed out. And it's just horrible, right? Like, the guy goes through all this shit. They torture him to get to Achamian. Now, during all this, somehow, Achamian has summoned his Wathi doll. And that's just like, the little fucking doll that's got like a demon spirit in it. And this whole part was kind of confusing to me. I didn't really know what was going on until the last minute, but I love that I was confused until the last minute. When I realized finally when the Wathi doll shows up and he's scratching the fucking sigil off to free Achamian, I was just like, yes! Pretty much this entire journey up till now, we have constantly kind of seen Achamian insinuate that he could fuck a whole bunch of shit up. And now we get to see That is true. Because basically what we are seeing is Seswatha. Like, Achamian and Seswatha are like one or so. I mean, maybe I'm a little confused on that, but it's like they're the same person in this moment, and Achamian is fucking up the Scarlet Spires. I mean, this is the most like powerful, like most aggressive display of magic, I think, because it's so dominant. Like, there is, for some reason, when I watched or read this part, it was just like, dude, nothing gonna fuck with him right now. Like, I mean, the way that he was fucking people up, it felt like the no guy could step in front of him at that point, and he just would have been like, bitch. So, needless to say, Achamian makes his escape, and he saves Zenemus on his way out. Now, they don't get Iakis, who is like the one Scarlet Spire there that you really want to die. But he makes an escape. And now Achamian and Zenemus make their way back towards the Holy War. And, you know, the only thing crazier than this whole escapade is everything that's happened in the Holy War since Achamian's been gone. Now, when Achamian left to go to the library, the next day, Esmenet woke up to horrible news. Like, Kellhus is telling her that the library has been burnt down, and we know as the reader that the library was burnt down during the fight when the Scarlet Spires were trying to abduct Achamian. But that nobody else knows that, so the library is burnt down. Everybody thinks Achamian's dead. You know, Esmenet doesn't really want to believe it, and she doesn't want to push forward in the Holy War either. And this is, you know, before Zenemus goes on his rescue mission. He's like the one guy trying to like console like Esmenet and like try to get her to like kind of carry on kind of deal. And one way or the other, you know, she's got to like face the facts that Achamian is dead, and she pushes forward with Kellhus and Surway. You know, Surway's pregnant. She's trying to help her. And, you know, this is when we really start to see that grooming from Kellhus towards Esmenet. We're also really learning about the consult along the way as well. You know, we're learning more about the thing known as Sarcellus. You know, we watched Sarcellus die at the Battle of Mengedda. Yet then we watched one of the Synthes birds, like, kind of flying overhead, come down and like, him reanimate. And that was, like, kind of this little... That was cool, right? Because it was like, these things are such a big question mark, and so all this little stuff that kind of plays out and feeds the reader with all that information is just... It's helpful, but it's also just, like, more immersive, right? You're just like burying yourself more in this lore, in this history, and just all the crazy what the fuck of this world. Now, we're also beginning to see a lot of that madness kicking up in Nayor, you know, and we're also seeing that this thing between Kellhus and Nayor is becoming more like tense as well. Surway, you know, we watch the whole thing play out between Kellhus and Surway and Nayor, where Nayor just like straight up tries to take his prize and Kellhus denies him. And Nayor, like, kind of on the spot, just kind of like walks away and like lets Kellhus have Surway, because it's one of those things, right? Like, Skilvindi doesn't like care that much about women, and like that's part of Nair's, like, just the things that make him tick, right? That trackless step, like regret and shame, that pushes him to be the most brutal, violent man. So we're watching a lot of that shit play out, but like you're watching the confident barbarian be a little bit less confident, because we're watching the Dunyain Kellhus change the world around him, and there's just nothing Nayor can do about it. And when we get, I think it's Anarat, that battle, when basically, you know, they're letting the Skilvindi like call the shots, because along the way they've seen that he's been really helpful. So finally, like, Nayor's got the spot, man, and he's calling the shots, but he's gone mad, and he just ditches everybody on the battlefield. And he tries to go back and find Surway, and he finds Surway in the tent with another Kellhus. And he stabs him, finds out it's a skin spy, and this is when Nayor starts to understand, you know, the console and the skin spies and stuff. Of course, his like understanding is a bit different than everybody else's, but this brings in that whole deal, and like the madness of Nayor is just kind of goes full bore. We will see even later, like in this, like not much later, when like Kellhus finds Naor like in the water, just like naked, screaming and howling and going insane. After this, we watched the Holy War trudge through the desert. And I mean, we watched the Achamian sabotage their water supply. And this is what's really cool, man, because like like along the way, all these tactics that play out are like realistic tactics or things that would play out in a situation or in this kind of like crusade holy war. And it's just brutal. It's the most like grueling shit that people gotta go through. And when they're dehydrating through the desert, and Kellhus finds the the wells in the desert, and it's kind of, that's one more thing that just brings people to him, making him look like that prophet. But it's really what saves the holy war, because people are dying at a rapid rate from dehydration, and then you're getting like the plague and shit like that popping up, as well as starvation just all around. It's a horrible trek through that desert. It tests some of their faith. I feel like Proyas has a very rough trek through that desert, and I don't know if he necessarily, makes it through the desert the same person. It's definitely, like I said, it's grueling. That's just not even like the right word to say. It's a fucked up trip, and the Holy War is not the same when it finally reaches. When it finally makes it through the desert, and then we get, the siege of Caraskand. Now, the siege of Caraskand is not like an easy one or even like a victorious one. We know, like the early attempts are just basically futile. They like the Iron Men of the Tusk cannot get behind the walls. And what ultimately happens is a Achamian traitor is responsible for letting the men behind the walls. And once the men of the Tusk get behind the walls, it's a bloodbath and it's all havoc. And this is really just how it's played out along the way. Bakker did a great job of showing us the havoc and the chaos and destruction of these little victories of the Holy War. Every time they stop and win a battle in a place, like they're raping and pillaging and just the nastiest of nasties, and that, Caraskand is no different. Like it gets plenty fucked up. But during that siege, and when they take it over, the Achamian army, the Phantom army surrounds Caraskand. So now the Holy War is stuck behind the walls here at Caraskand. They're surrounded by the Achamian army, and things just don't get any better for them. We watch as things like starvation and disease begin to set in. Men are beginning to talk, because it's like, it seemed like the Holy War had been through so much, but yet it was seeming to be victorious. And so what's going on? Are the gods mad, And this is where a lot of those like campfire talks of Kellhus starts to come in play, right? Because you have, I believe it's the Zundaism. I butchered that one. I'll get it right eventually. But you have the guys that are following Kellhus, and you have the Orthodox men of the Tusk. And so what happens is you have all these people like Confus and whatnot that are trying to blame all this bad shit on Kellhus. They're saying that, the gods are pissed off because you are claiming a false prophet, and that's why we're cursed. This whole thing goes from bad to worse really fast, because you have Confus really trying to push that false prophet deal, and Sarcellus is on board there too. And then they try to tap Naor. Like, they're really trying to get Naor to claim, that Kellhus isn't a prince of Atrathal, that he's a prince of nothing. And this is, they're getting Naor like when he's really, in his madness, and he hates Kellhus, you know what I mean? And he thinks that, Kellhus took his prize away from him. And that's kind of that's like the linchpin there, and that's what gets Naor to like say, yes, he is not, a prince of Atrathal. He's the prince of nothing. And you also have the whole deal between Naor and Proyas, where, Proyas is like, coming to Naor for information about Kellhus, and Naor just tells Proyas to go to him, go ask him. And when Proyas goes to Kellhus, he finds him with Esmenet, and that kind of floors Proyas. And, because like I said, at this point, Kellhus has groomed Esmenet. He's also had his son with Serway, so Kellhus has got a lot of irons in the fire at this point. But this whole thing doesn't go down well, right? From bad to worse. We see that Serway gets her fucking throat cut by Sarcellus. That's like obviously drives Naor like even further mad. And they get tied together, like, right? They like strap like Serway and Kellhus together and hang them upside down, like from a circumfix. This whole thing that plays out is kind of amazing, right? I mean, it's not just like, it is heartbreaking, it's super sad, and it's super dark, but this is when we start to see some stuff go on with Kellhus. Kellhus up to this point has kind of just been a badass, and he has taken, the world of men by storm. And he has certainly not had anybody really stand in his way besides that, non-man in the prologue of the first book. But here he is, kind of in a way, it's almost like he's helpless, and he's really like put in a position where he has to make a leap of faith. And this is also where we see him cry. Like, he sheds a tear, and that is like, just the thing is, for most normal people that would be a complete normal reaction, but for a Dunyain, that is unheard of. Shortly after this, we see this is when Achamian and Zanimus make it back to the Holy War, and it's not the same Holy War that they that left them. And it's, the whole thing between Esmenet and all this shit is going to be super heartbreaking for Achamian. And we see this whole deal play out between, Proyas and Achamian, where we know as the reader that Proyas received a letter from Mengedda, where Mengedda tells Proyas to back the heathen, So Proyas knows he needs Achamian, really, and the fucked up thing is he had basically condemned him in the past, but here Achamian just shows up on his fucking doorstep. So Proyas is telling Achamian about this stuff, all the situation with Kellhus, and when Proyas shows Achamian Mengedda's letter, Achamian's like, dude, call court now. And he basically gets it all set up, all the great names, everyone, and they have that whole like trial for Kellhus. And Achamian's telling him, like, hey, look, like, this is our savior here in this war, because, they have the proof of the skin spies. And they let everyone know, it's like, look, this is the only guy that can see these people. Like, we can't fucking win this war without him. And it's at this same trial that Naor sees Sarcellus, and he starts to put things together, and he watches Sarcellus leave, and he follows him. And when he follows him back to the tree, Naor and Sarcellus go at it, man. They have that fight, and honestly, it's, as badass as Naor is, he might not have won that fight. That little bit of distraction that the Shrial Knight gives Naor by asking Sarcellus, like, where did you learn to fight like this? Like, that split second is what gave Naor his victory. I don't want to sit here and like do a dick measuring contest, like, oh, he would have won either way. I'm just saying, like, Sarcellus, the thing that was Sarcellus is kind of goddamn unbeatable. And the thing is that split second gave Naor the victory strike, and it really brought this whole thing to a fold, like, because they're arguing about like the skin spies and cutting Kellhus's bonds, freeing him. Is he our savior? Is he the prophet? And then Naor really put the nail in the coffin by showing Sarcellus was a skin spy. It's not only it was like, hey, look, these skin spies are fucking real. Look, Sarcellus, your own Shrial Knight, is one of them. There could be any one of us. This is how scary this fucking situation is, people. This is why we need Kellhus. Now, Kellhus does get his bonds cut and he's freed, right? And like, basically, they're accepting him as the warrior prophet. He is going to be their savior. At the same time that this happens, this basically is kind of condemning Confus and the Nansur Empire, because it's basically saying that, like, they were really being dirty dicks, right? Like, and they were. And so we know, like, there's, like, as much as it's like, okay, cool, we got our prophet back, but there's still a lot of, like, conflict here amongst the Holy War and the Inrethi people. Not to mention, they're still surrounded inside the walls of Caraskand. But after the whole, after this, their prophet is back to them. It's really like they kind of like reunite, though, even amongst all this chaos. And you know what I mean? They fuck shit up, man. They clear out the Chianine army. It does seem like a little like, dun dun dun, dun, but it's still awesome. Now, before the book ends, though, there's that last bit, and it's like it takes us to the faraway north, right? And it's like with characters we've never heard of. It's almost kind of confusing because you're like, what the fuck is going on now? And what happens is like this is kind of playing out with like we really are starting to understand the consult in the Incoroi, right? Like this is one of the most grimdark endings in a book. It's so dastardly. We watch, the Incoroi, like then they're up in the north trying to figure out who the Dunyain are. You know what I mean? Because, throughout the events, the Incoroi are like, holy shit, like, what the fuck? Who is this dude? Who is this, Anasarimber Kellhus? Like, who is this warrior prophet? Because he's fucking our whole deal up. Who is he? So they're up in the north, and just, they doing this fucking, like, whole rape, like killing scene of this guy's family trying to like extort information from him, and it's just dastardly. And I don't think the dude knows anything. Nobody knows anything. The Dunyain are in Ishwal. They're secret and safe. So essentially, you know what I mean, the Incoroi are out there just raping and killing motherfuckers, hand over fist, trying to get that Dunyain information, and they're never gonna get it. Well, once again, I hope you guys found some level of entertainment or enjoyment out of this. I know my Let's Talk videos are long, and they are riddled with cursing, but that's just kind of the point, man. When I do these spoiler videos, it's really just me cutting loose, like just getting it all out there. You know what I mean? And I just hope that it's not such a shit show that you guys feel like I bastardized something of Bakker's, because I truly am a fan at this point and proud to call myself, one of you. Truth shines. But anyway, guys, thanks for spending some time down here at the channel. It really helps. And if you're new, please like and subscribe. As always, boo.